little update on the lira, world's greatest currency. It's not at all the world's greatest currency, it's the world's worst currency. So, a few developments in the past week of significance, not just the fact that it's just breaking through all-time lows, which it is. You have the intervention of the central bank into the FX markets, and then you have the stepping down of the finance minister, the firing of. The CBRT intervening in the lira. So this is something that they've done before. If you look at a chart of USDTRY in mid-2020, shortly after markets had melted down in March, but from April 2020, every asset that had been crushed was in a record sort of bull market recovery. And of all times, right? It's a very strange time for two assets, and only really two assets, to just not participate, just be absolutely flat during that time period. And those two assets are the lira and Bitcoin. And if you look at a chart, you'll see that those two have just flatlined. This is a period in which the Turkish central bank was intervening in the currency markets. And as you can see, they, it's clearly this is like what was happening, right? This is not free market forces. This is a very unnatural chart. Clearly there was the hand of some larger force, some, policy force involved. And they blew through, I forgot what the exact number was off the top of my head, but they blew through over 100 billion in FX reserves in order to defend the lira, and they successfully did for that time period. But then they realized that this cannot continue. This is not sustainable. And then they gave up, and they just started buying gold like crazy, and this is when they became the largest buyers of gold in the world. And they just let the lira go. And go it did. USDTRY started breaking it out to new highs, and then you'll see gold and Bitcoin doing the same. It's not a coincidence. This is why I keep saying the lira is very important for crypto and for non-fiat assets. Turkey is a huge economy within EM. Is anyone from the 9th to 11th biggest holder of gold in the world? The central bank is. And its citizens have been the most crypto adoptive culture for years in that region and in Europe, in the world for that matter. Way ahead of the United States. And they had to because of the 2018 crisis, currency crisis. Compared to what's going on right now, that at that time was a very big deal, as it should be, but they if only we knew what we were in store for. Anyway, but we know how that movie ends. This defending of the currency, the intervening of the central bank into the currency. They don't have unlimited funds to do this. They need dollars, and you can't defend the lira by printing more lira. Their problem is not central banks with the printing press, when they artificially distort currency markets via the printing press and all that kind of thing. That's to get their currencies weaker, their respective currencies weaker. The Fed will try to outprint the BOJ or vice versa or whatever it is. And because they're all just doing it at the same time, it's more or less at the same time, at the same rate. This is why major, FX pairs don't really have drastic swings. Unlike Turkey, unlike the lira, which has had a 50, 60, 100% swing, on a yearly basis. So Turkey's already run out of reserves, and now they have to somehow defend the lira. So when they stepped into the FX markets the other day, I don't know why they did it. Maybe just to, try to attempt to scare people off. Either way, that worked for that. There was a significant plunge in USDTRY. From peak to the bottom, I think it was about 11% move in within an hour. massive. But again, that was for an hour. And then after an hour, you just got a reversal, and then you have basically USDTRY just right back to where it was. So what the hell was the point of that? I mean, I guess that's not the result they had anticipated, or maybe it was, but that's not the result that they had been, going for. It's the result they got. But now, like, FX intervention is off the table. So I don't know what can possibly stem this, like, tide. Short of Erdogan coming out and saying, I've been completely wrong about, the basic forces of economics, and that raising interest rates does not cause inflation. In fact, raising interest rates can combat inflation quite effectively, not the other way around. And so, therefore, from now on, we will have a massive rip in interest rates. Like, the policy rate will be at 50% tomorrow. And if that doesn't curb, our soaring inflation and doesn't stem the, tide of bleeding out of the lira, we will raise it another, we'll do it 10% per clip, 60%, 70% front end policy rates until we get this under control. So if President Erdogan says that, then yeah, that could save it. I don't see him saying that anytime soon. What he's been saying is the complete opposite. He's never had like his, flag firmly planted into the ground of this is nonsense, this as in conventional economic wisdom is nonsense. I will never back down on my interest rate policy. He's talking too like a central banker. He's not supposed to be, at least, the head of the central bank. He is talking like a Jay Powell or a Christine Lagarde or Governor Kuroda or whoever. Talking like as in talking from the role of. None of them actually talk like that. God forbid, the world would end if any of them ever said anything as kind of aggressive as he does. But he's talking like a central banker. You don't actually hear anything from the central bank head himself. I don't even know. At this point, I've stopped tracking their names because they get replaced. They don't get like the permanent sort of door label that they have to custom make. They get the temporary like "Hello, my name is" stickers that you can just kind of rip off. Because why give them the permanent one? I just don't see how the lira recovers at this point. I don't see who is trying to buy the lira and lira denominated assets now after this. Like why now, right? Like you could have said that 3 weeks ago, could have said that 3 months ago. Like, why is this the bottom, right? And because it hasn't been the bottom this whole time. So why is this arbitrary moment where I'm making this video right now the bottom? If it is, it has nothing to do with with me making the video. Like, so people were calling bottoms on the lira based on what, right? So the path of least resistance is just for the lira to continue to get destroyed. And then there will probably be some short cover, the thing is that if it reverses, a short cover will be massive. But yeah, it'll just keep going on this path. Now, here's the problem. Why should you care? This will eventually be gold positive, but it'll be probably gold negative, or not gold negative. It'll continue to hold gold back because Turkey, I believe, is the culprit behind gold not participating in all of the upside. What mid-2020 showed us was that the Central Bank of Turkey has the ability to stop, an asset in its, dead in its tracks, amidst a global movement of assets in one direction. So right now, inflation, related assets are moving because inflation is on move, except for gold. Gold is supposed to be the ultimate, right? Why is it not participating? And no, it's not because Bitcoin stole all its thunder away. It's because there's a massive seller in the markets in the name of Turkey. Now, Turkey can come up like, as it's like filed as like a net buyer seller of gold at any given moment at, like these sort of quarterly like reportings. None of those things are like audited or anything. That Turkey works through its banks in which to do so. Nobody actually really knows how much the Turkish government, this Turkish central bank, actually owns, let alone is moving. But Turkey is happy to actively day trade gold. They did in 2020. They pushed gold through its 2011 highs, its previous 2011 highs of whatever it was, 19, whatever the hell it was, through the 2000 USD level, up to its whatever the peak thereafter was. In early August, like the first week of August, the first Thursday of August, I remember this like very clearly, is when gold in USD terms topped and reversed. And that's because on that Thursday, that's when the CBRT did like a side door tightening sort of thing, and they stopped buying gold. They drove gold up themselves. They pushed gold up. They were the biggest buyers of gold in 2020. And then that Q3 quarter, they became not just the biggest sellers of gold in the world, so they were both the biggest buyers of gold year to date in 2020 and the biggest sellers of gold year to date. In Q3 of 2020, the CBRT, as well as I think it was like Uzbekistan or some other country, but those two central banks alone sold so much gold that for the first time in a decade, they brought global net central bank, buying of gold into negative territory. Like, in other words, for an entire decade, central banks in aggregate were net buyers of gold. And they flipped to being net sellers of gold that quarter because of those two central banks' actions. That's how much they sold. And you can see that reflected in the gold chart, obviously. So the lira matters to people who are concerned with inflation-related assets or inflation hedges, because there's a spillover effect too. If gold isn't participating, then it's going to get, like, Bitcoin is going to attract some of that as well, or non-fiat assets in general, stocks even, right? Stuff like that, stocks, real estate, whatever. And then on a financial level, you have to watch BBVA, Spanish bank, massive bank. If you don't know what BBVA is, it's like a Barclays, which is UK, or BNP Paribas, which is France. BBVA is that of Spain. It's very much integral to the global financial system, obviously to the EU financial system. BBVA is very long guarantee bank. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Guarantee, I don't know. Turkish bank, it owns like 50% of it, and it's trying to buy the other 50%. Other European banks that had exposure to Turkey, be it ING or UniCredit, they all pulled out. They all took losses and they pulled out. They cut their losses. BBVA is doubling down. It's the only bank going the opposite direction. The CEO of BBVA recently was, like, just a few days ago, was asked, like, what the hell's up with your getting even more long Turkey? And he said that this lira getting destroyed thing is wonderful for them, because now they get to buy that other half of Guaranteed Bank, that other half, that stake, for like 30% less or something. Like, so this lira getting destroyed thing is like, that whole thing is helping us, is what he's saying. That is the stupidest thing that you could say, because you didn't intend for that to happen. You set a price, a buy price, just because you can buy it lower now. That you didn't plan for that. If that transaction had taken place, it means that whatever you're saying you're saving on, that's what you would have been down by in the last 3 weeks. So to like celebrate this whole thing about, the lira's getting weaker, so that means we can buy the rest of that stake in that shitty bank in a dying currency for less. It's like a horrible thing. That would be like if not that I ever make recommendations ever, But that'd be like if I recommended you buy, like SoftBank, and then SoftBank fell 20% this past week, which it did, I think. And then I came back and said, hey, that SoftBank recommendation, wasn't that fantastic? Like, you can buy it for 20% less than when I told you to buy it originally. That would be very. So what happens when they do actually execute that buy, and the lira continues to fall? Then what? What are they going to say? You set yourself up for now having to say the exact opposite thing. We're getting killed by the lira now. That's how that works. So I don't know. So him saying that is grasping for straws to put on any sort of positive spin to it, anything positive at all. You should have just been like, this is this is bad. We're still gonna go ahead with it for whatever reason, XYZ, but acknowledge that it's bad. Don't pretend that this is a great thing, because it's gonna come back to bite you. And the reason that they're doubling down on it is because I think it's because if they were to spin it off, that would be a really debilitating loss for BBVA. And so they're trying to just double down because they feel like there's probably no choice. But doubling down on this asset could potentially just bring the entire bank down, which is not a scenario that they're going to ever consider. But if BBVA falls, or if BBVA gets in such trouble that they need to be intervened, or they need some sort of support, the ECB is the one to support them. And so the Turkish lira falling like this is an ECB matter, even though Turkey is not part of the Eurozone. And if it becomes an ECB matter, it becomes a global matter. So that's why that matters. People look at China and Chinese credit, and it is alarming, and it is nothing to brush off. But keep an eye on Turkey and BBVA and the lira. Like, that is a ticking time bomb that is not something that is, like China is like kind of contained within the Chinese financial system, and who knows if it'll even blow up to, but the lira is that's going on right now. So anyway, yeah, lira, the intervention is a sign of, this is kind of our, like, we have no other choice, and it never works for the long term. It's always just some sort of short-term thing, and it only works for that time. And the last time it was like at least for a quarter. This time it was for an hour. And they might try to do it again, but the unraveling of the sort of cross-asset global financial, markets could very well start with this, with the lira, the lira contagion risk. But just be cognizant of this, and just think in terms of potential lira contagion risk. And if you think that you don't have exposure to Turkey or the lira, that's not, like all things, it's not what you have direct exposure to or not. It's what do you have exposure to that has direct exposure to, or like what's part of the daisy chain. And I mean, it's Turkey, it's the lira. Everyone has, just keep a very close eye on it. The lira has an implied volatility right now of like 140. That's twice Bitcoin. That is an actual country's currency having twice the volatility of Bitcoin, the implied volatility of Bitcoin. It's fucking insane. I feel very sorry for the Turkish people and those who have their assets denominated in lira. And before we start to, we could criticize our respective central bankers as we should, but let's also keep things in context, like in terms of what central bank independence or lack thereof can be, and how it is in the other parts of the world. And not just that, but imagine having the lack of central bank independence, and the politician that has taken away the central bank independence and is using it for that politician's own sort of political, agenda. Imagine that person was an absolutely insane person that didn't understand basic economics. that's what's crazy about Turkey and Erdogan and the lack of central bank independence, is that like if Donald Trump or Joe Biden or whoever were to hijack the central bank for their own purposes, and fine, you could argue they whatever, I don't want to hear about that. At least they sort of understand how things work in like the general the plumbing, like Econ 101. This guy does not subscribe to that. It's truly insane. So there is no going long Turkey as far as I'm concerned. And then anyone who's trying to say that, I don't understand how you can make that call, because you are somehow making a call that this individual who has a fundamental flipped reality and understanding of economics is going to change. Like, how are you modeling for that? How are you modeling Erdogan's, like brain, like thought process? I don't want to hear about the fundamentals of the lira. Like, it's not the fundamentals that's destroying the lira. So anyone who's making like a defined call on the lira for like support for the upside, on the institutional side, I think is like beyond irresponsibly stupid. If they're doing so on a fundamental basis. Same thing can be said about going long Chinese stocks. Like Alibaba has lost 500 billion in market cap. So, looks like things are priced in. The fuck are you talking about? Alibaba did not sell off because of valuations. It sold off because of what seems like a very arbitrary, heavy-handed, top-down regime of restrictions and regulations. That's what sold it off. So if you want to buy the bottom of it, or say the end is here, you have to give a regulatory sort of reason. The reason that it went down, why did that stop, is where you have to start. Not some totally separate metric like fucking valuations. So anybody who starts their thesis with something totally irrelevant, you've already lost me. I don't even care if afterwards you say something that has some sort of merit, let alone relevance. If you start with Alibaba's EV to EBITDA, or the PE get out. Sorry, you have no credibility. Sorry. Things you say after that have no credibility after that too. So things like the lira, things like Chinese equities, Chinese credit, go ahead and go long if you want. I'm not saying don't. I'm not saying do. I'm not saying don't. I'm not saying short. I'm not saying anything. I'm saying, like, think about how you think about them, and think about how others are thinking about them, and then go from there. All right, thanks.